Occam's razor, OJ Simpson. The killings were extremely brutal, bloody, and fast. Nicole Brown Simpson, 35, and her friend Ron Goldman were murdered on June 12, 1994, in front of Brown Simpson's Brentwood, California condominium, while her 2 children slept inside. Whoever carried out their murders appeared to go straight for the kill. A passerby discovered the victims on the floor, Brown Simpson at the foot of the courtyard stairs, and Goldman nearby, close to some vegetation. The murders would become one of the most notorious crimes in recent U.S. history, with O.J. Simpson, Nicole Brown Simpson's famous ex-husband and former NFL player turned broadcaster and sometimes actor, becoming the leading suspect. In 1977, Nicole was an 18-year-old waitress, and O.J. was still married to his first wife, whom he divorced in 1979. In 1985, Nicole and O.J. were wed. The couple had 2 children together, but Nicole confided in friends and relatives that he was abusive to her throughout the years. In 1989, O.J. was arrested and entered a no-contest plea in a domestic abuse case. During the 1989 episode of domestic violence, Simpson allegedly kicked and punched Nicole, who reportedly told the authorities, "He's going to kill me." The couple had separated by 1992. In 1993, they tried to reconcile, but it didn't work out. A top investigator said during the so-called trial of the century that O.J. Simpson was the only suspect ever seriously scrutinized for the murders. Simpson was acquitted of the double murders after almost 9 months of testimony. Although Simpson was later held liable for Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman's murders in a civil trial, no other suspects have been identified for the crime of furiously stabbing and slashing her and Goldman. There were no indications of a robbery, a break-in, or any known motivation for the brutal murders. As with all violent crimes or deaths concerning celebrities, their supporters or fans have a hard time believing that someone they've put up on a pedestal can commit any wrongdoings of such a violent nature. This is the perfect environment for the birth of theories that may help absolve their hero's guilt. The O.J. Simpson case is no different. The alternate theories. O.J.'s son was the killer. The alternative theory that has gained the greatest popularity in the mainstream media is private investigator Bill Deer's opinion that O.J. Simpson's firstborn son, Jason Simpson, was the true killer. Deer presented his conclusions in a BBC broadcast titled O.J. Simpson: The Untold Story, and wrote a book titled O.J. is Guilty, but Not of Murder. Jason murdered his stepmother in a fit of jealous anger after she did not attend a family dinner he had organized. According to this theory, O.J. came later to help his son in covering up the murder. The majority of Deer's evidence is circumstantial, including Jason Simpson's purported history of severe mental illness, which, according to Deer's detractors, was acquired unlawfully, as well as flaws in Jason's official alibi. The Independent and the Huffington Post have covered his notion favorably, or at least not wholly suspiciously, although former Village Voice editor Tony Ortega claims the investigation is full of it. Ortega went on to say, Deer's timeline for that night is a complete farce, and his ideas for how O.J. Simpson's blood ended up at the scene are beyond preposterous. O.J. was a subject of the MK Ultra program. There has never been an event in American history without some internet user attributing it to the Illuminati. In the O.J. Simpson case, conspiracy theorists assert that the football player was a subject of the CIA's MK Ultra mind control experiment, a common topic of discussion among those who believe that the world is secretly ruled by a cabal of shadowy elites known as the Illuminati or the New World Order. Project MK Ultra was an illegal human experimentation program designed and carried out by the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States. Its purpose was to develop techniques and identify drugs that could be used to weaken individuals and coerce confessions through brainwashing and psychological torture. Creating zombie assassins to carry out assassinations was also reportedly a project being researched by MK Ultra scientists. The project was started in 1953, scaled down in 1964 and 1967, and ended in 1973. MKUltra employed a variety of techniques to manipulate the mental states and brain functions of its subjects, including the covert administration of high doses of psychoactive drugs, notably LSD and other chemicals, electroshocks, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, and other forms of torture. According to proponents of this idea, at the time of the murders, OJ was under the influence of the Illuminati, who anticipated that his trial would spark a racial war in the United States. If you believe this sounds suspiciously similar to the Manson killings, conspiracy theorists claim that's another sign they're correct. OJ hired a serial killer. In 2012, a theory circulated in the media claiming that the killings were committed by a prolific serial killer. Clay Rogers, the brother of serial killer Glenn Rogers, claimed in the Investigation Discovery documentary, My Brother the Serial Killer, that Glenn confessed to murdering Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. The Rogers family asserts that Glenn phoned home a few weeks before the murder to say he was partying with Nicole, and receipts show that he was working in Los Angeles at the time. They claim that after being convicted of the murder of Tina Marie Cribbs, Rogers informed police that he had been recruited by OJ to steal an expensive set of earrings from Brown's condominium and to kill her if she got in the way. There are reasons to doubt Rogers' assertions. After his arrest, he claimed to have killed up to 70 victims, a claim he subsequently recanted. Moreover, the chronology does not make sense, since Rogers was serving a 6-week prison term at the time of the killings. Drug dealers killed Nicole. In 2011, Simpson's attorney F. Lee Bailey proposed a less dramatic explanation about the killing's true perpetrator. According to a 20,000-word article published on his website, Bailey and the rest of Simpson's defense team rejected a number of possible witnesses who may have testified in Simpson's defense at trial. According to Bailey, the defense was concerned that calling further witnesses might result in a mistrial due to jury attrition. One such witness was Tom Lang, a neighbor who would have testified that he saw Nicole Brown Simpson conversing with 2 unknown men outside her apartment on the night of the killings. Bailey said that he believed the 2 men were drug dealers who mistakenly murdered Brown. He declares that he will die defending Simpson against the allegations brought against him. "So long as I am alive," says Bailey, "there will be one person, aside from Simpson himself, who knows from the evidence that he did not kill Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman." The murders of Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman using Occam's razor principle. What is Occam's razor principle? The principle gives precedence to simplicity. Of 2 competing theories, the simpler explanation of an entity is to be preferred. The principle is also expressed as entities are not to be multiplied beyond necessity. Using Occam's razor principles in these gruesome murders gives us the most logical sense of events on that night and points to OJ Simpson as the guilty party. Nicole Brown Simpson dined with her children and family members at the Mezzaluna restaurant in Brentwood about 6:30 p.m. on Sunday, June 12, 1994. Around 8 p.m., they left the restaurant and stopped for ice cream on the way home. At 9:15, one of Nicole's sisters contacted Mezzaluna to inform the restaurant that Nicole's mother had forgotten her glasses there. Ron Goldman, a waiter, volunteered to drop them off with Nicole. At approximately 9:50 p.m., according to the testimony of witnesses at the murder trial, he left the restaurant to return the glasses. The prosecution stated that at about 10:15 p.m., Brown, Simpson, and Goldman were slain. They were stabbed to death outside Nicole Brown Simpson's Brentwood condominium at 880 South Bundy Drive. Simpson's children were asleep inside the house when the murder took place. This timetable, according to the prosecution, would have allowed OJ Simpson to commit the crime and return to his Brentwood residence, where he was picked up by a limo driver at 11 p.m. Simpson left LA on American Airlines Flight 668 at 11:45 p.m., bound for Chicago. According to the general manager of a Chicago airport hotel, OJ Simpson arrived around 6:15 a.m. Simpson reportedly informed the manager that he was attending the event in his role as a representative for vehicle rental agency Hertz. The manager said he departed around 8:30 a.m. Back in Los Angeles, Pablo Fuenve, Brown Simpson's neighbor, said that he heard Brown Simpson's dog, Cato, whimpering at 10:15 or 10:20 p.m. Stephen Schwab, a resident of Nicole Brown Simpson's neighborhood, testified that while walking his own dog at 10:30 p.m., he saw an Akita breed dog with bloody paws. The dog followed Schwab home and refused to return to where it had been discovered. Sucro Bostepi and Bettina Rasmussen, who were his neighbors, volunteered to house the dog overnight. The pair said that they decided to follow the barking and anxious dog, and just before midnight they found the corpses of Brown Simpson and Goldman outside of Brown Simpson's condominium. The Akita was recognized as Cato, Nicole Brown Simpson's dog. Simpson allegedly returned to Los Angeles after being informed of Nicole Brown Simpson's death by police. When Simpson returned to his mansion in Brentwood, about 2 miles from his ex-wife's residence, police arrived and handcuffed him. The police then transported him to headquarters in downtown Los Angeles to conduct a follow-up investigation and to question him as a potential witness. On the morning of June 17th, police contacted one of Simpson's lawyers, Robert Shapiro, to advise him that Simpson had to surrender at 11 a.m., as Simpson was facing murder charges. When Simpson did not surrender by midday, police notified Shapiro that Simpson had been designated a fugitive and proceeded to a residence where Simpson was staying in the San Fernando Valley to arrest him. By the time they arrived, Simpson had already fled with Al Cowlings, a former college and professional football friend. At 5:51 p.m., Simpson allegedly called 911 from his white Ford Bronco, which Cowling was driving, using his mobile phone. Authorities tracked down the car on the Santa Ana Freeway in Orange County after receiving the call. The authorities started chasing Simpson's automobile at 5:56 p.m. The pursuit through the streets of Los Angeles was seen by people all around the world as it happened. The event was televised live by television stations, interrupting the 1994 NBA Finals. The event was billed the most famous ride on American shores since Paul Revere's, with an estimated 95 million people watching a live stream of the chase. At around 8 p.m., the pursuit ended in the driveway of OJ Simpson's Brentwood residence. Simpson remained in the Bronco for some time, but by 8:47, he was in police custody. Simpson's chase, arrest, and trial were among the most extensively reported events in U.S. history. The trial, often referred to as the trial of the century due to its worldwide attention, concluded on October 3, 1995, after 11 months with a judgment of not guilty for the 2 murders. An estimated 100 million people in the United States tuned in to see or hear the judgment announcement. After Simpson's acquittal, no more arrests or convictions were made in connection with the killings. Although Simpson was found not guilty of the 2 murders, the evidence against him being the perpetrator is staggering. The prosecution produced significant DNA evidence in Simpson's case, including matching bloody footprints, hair follicles, and a glove recovered near Simpson's residence with blood that tested positive as Goldman's. In Simpson's Ford Bronco, blood was discovered near the driver's outside door handle. Other blood samples were found on the dashboard, door, steering wheel, and carpeting inside the vehicle. DNA analysis revealed that a sample of the blood had a combination of Simpson's and the victim's genetic markers. The first alibi given for OJ Simpson was that he slept throughout the murders. Later, his defense provided a number of new alibi claims, including one in which he was hitting golf balls outside his house. Simpson's defense also said that the housekeeper of a neighbor, Rosa Lopez, spotted his automobile parked outside the residence. However, Lopez eventually admitted under cross-examination that she was uncertain as to whether his Bronco was there. There is no better way to announce "I'm guilty" than to produce a book outlining how you would theoretically commit the crime, and all for financial gain. Simpson said in the book, "If I had actually done it, I would have brought my good gloves that day. I would have thought it was a shame they shrunk when I left them out on the patio, but I would have brought them just the same. They were my lucky gloves, and I would have needed them because I was going to stab my slut of a wife, hypothetically. In response to Simpson's acquittal on criminal charges, the family of Ron Goldman launched a civil claim against Simpson. On October 23, 1996, the parties gave their opening comments, and on January 16, 1997, they rested their cases. Simpson was found liable for the wrongful death of Goldman, battery against Goldman, and violence against Brown by a civil jury in Santa Monica, California, on February 5, 1997. The court ordered Simpson to pay $33.5 million in damages. In February 1999, Simpson's Heisman Trophy and other items were auctioned off to raise almost $500,000 for the Goldman family. Using Occam's razor principle, OJ Simpson had the motive, the time, and a long history of domestic abuse against Brown. Simpson reportedly assaulted his wife during sex, threw her out of a moving vehicle, and threatened to decapitate her ex-boyfriends, according to journal entries. The records also indicate instances of verbal abuse, such as Simpson reportedly calling her fat and ordering her to get an abortion throughout her pregnancy. Simpson might have dodged prison for the murder cases, but the public overwhelmingly believes that he is guilty. Using Occam's razor principle asserts this view. It was the trial of the century, but the questions remain unanswered until now. Who killed Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman? Did O.J. Simpson get away with murder, or was someone else guilty of the crime? Join us as we explore the facts about the murders, the different theories, and the case against O.J. Simpson. It's June 12, 1994. O.J. Simpson's daughter has a dance recital in the evening. Before he sets off, he asks his house guest, Brian Cato Kalin, to set him up on a date on the following Tuesday. Nicole and her family arrive at her daughter's school, Paul Revere Middle School, around 4:30 p.m. O.J. arrives around 15 minutes later and sits behind the Brown family. The recital ends a little after 6 p.m. The Browns and O.J. chat with each other for a little while. Between 6:30 to 7 p.m., Nicole and her party arrive at the restaurant Mezzaluna, where her friend Ron Goldman works. O.J. is not invited. Around the same time, O.J. is already at the Rockingham estate, where he tells Kalin that he's angry. Nicole was wearing a tight dress and she didn't let him join them for dinner. Around 7:35, O.J. leaves a voicemail to former LA Raiderette Gretchen Stockdale, where he tells her that he's totally unattached. The dinner ends around 8 p.m. and Nicole, along with her children, leaves the restaurant. They stop for ice cream on the way home. At a little over 9 p.m., Kalin calls his friend Tom O'Brien, but O.J. interrupts the call because he needs to borrow $20 for dinner. At 9:10 p.m., O.J. and Kalin ride in O.J.'s Bentley to buy food at McDonald's. At 9:15 p.m., one of Nicole's sisters calls Mezzaluna to ask about the prescription glasses that her mother had left at the restaurant. Goldman offers to return the glasses. By 9:25 p.m., O.J. and Kalin have taken their order from the drive-through lane and are on their way home. At 9:33 p.m., Goldman's shift at work ends. By 9:45 p.m., O.J. and Kalin have arrived at the Rockingham estate. Kalin leaves O.J. by the Bronco, walking towards the guest house where he is currently staying. Around 9:50 p.m., Goldman leaves the restaurant with the prescription glasses, which are placed inside a white envelope. At the estate's guest house, Kalin calls his friend Rachel Ferrara at 10:10 p.m. Around 10:15 p.m., one of Nicole's neighbors hears a dog continuously barking. Prosecutors believe that this is when the murders happened. At 10:25, a limousine driver, Alan Park, arrives early at the estate to drive O.J. to the airport for his flight to Chicago. He decides to wait and parks his car on a side street. At 10:30, Stephen Schwab, Nicole's neighbor, walks his dog. At 10:40, Park pulls up in front of the Rockingham estate and buzzes the intercom 3 to 4 times. He doesn't get a response. At 10:55 p.m., Park calls his boss, Dale St. John, to tell him that no one is answering the buzzer. St. John orders him to wait until 11:15 because Simpson is known to be always late. Around this time, Kalen is still on the phone at the guest house and hears 3 thumps on the wall of his room. One of Nicole's neighbors reports hearing someone shout, "Hey," 3 times. At 10:56 p.m., Schwab finds Nicole's white Akita unattended with bloody paws. Shortly before 11 p.m., Park sees a black individual around 6 feet, 200 pounds, wearing dark clothes, walking across the driveway and enters the house. Around 11 p.m., Kalen goes to the front of the house to inspect what was causing the noise. He notices the driver at the gate. Park buzzes the intercom once more. This time, Simpson answers. He states that he overslept and had just gotten out of the shower. At 11:01 p.m., OJ exits the house. The driver takes him to the Los Angeles International Airport, LAX, for his flight to Chicago. They reach the airport at 11:35 p.m. The flight leaves at 11:45 p.m. At 11:40 p.m., a neighbor of Schwab, Sukru Boztepe, takes Nicole's dog and sees red spots on its paws and legs. At midnight, Boztepe and his wife, Bettina Rasmussen, takes the dog for a walk. It leads them to Nicole's condo. At 12:10 a.m., the couple finds Nicole and Goldsman bodies outside of her townhouse. When the first police officer arrives, Nicole was sprawled at the bottom of a small set of stairs that led to an outdoor walkway. She had 12 stab wounds, several lacerations on different parts of her body, and a deep slash on her throat. She was also badly beaten, with bruises on her face. Goldman was found on a small spot of soil by the fence surrounding the backyard. He was brutally beaten, with cuts on different parts of his body, as well as 25 stab wounds. There was a glove by his body. Inside, the officer discovers a cup of half-melted ice cream on the banister. The master bathroom is lit with candles, and the tub is full of water. The TV is on, and the kids are asleep in their rooms. At 4:15 a.m., OJ checks into a hotel in Chicago. At 4:30 a.m., the police arrive at OJ's house to inform him of Nicole's death. They discover a blood stain on OJ's Ford Bronco, which was parked on the street, with a trail of blood going past the gate and leading towards the house. They also find a bloody glove that matched the one found beside Goldman's body. Detectives Mark Furman and Philip Vaneter arrive at OJ's house at 5 a.m. There are several vehicles in the driveway and a light turned on upstairs. From 5:15 to 5:30 a.m., the detectives inspect the bloodstain on OJ's Ford Bronco and the drops of blood leading to the house. They try to get in touch with someone from inside the house. When they get no response, Detective Furman jumps the fence to let the police in and starts searching for people. They find Kalen and wake him up. They check his shoes, but there's no blood on them. The police ask if there are other people on the property. Kalen tells them about Arnell, Simpson's daughter, who is staying at the estate. Sometime between 5:40 to 5:50 a.m., the detectives wake Arnell up. She leads them to the house and calls OJ's longtime assistant, Kathy Randa. At 6 a.m., the police contacts OJ as well as Nicole's parents. OJ checks out of the hotel by 6:30. Between 7 and 7:30 a.m., Detective Vaneter declares the area a crime scene. An LAPD criminologist arrives to set up yellow tape lines and paper cups to cover the blood spots. The detective gets a warrant to search the house. By 7:41 a.m., OJ is on a plane going back to LA. At 10:45 a.m., the judge issues a search warrant and the police start searching OJ's mansion and find more traces of blood around the property. OJ arrives at his mansion at 11:08. He is handcuffed by the police. His lawyer, Howard Weitzman, arrives and asks for the handcuffs to be removed. At noon, OJ is taken in for questioning. He was interrogated for 3.5 hours. At 4:15 p.m., OJ leaves the police station. The police continue their investigation. On June 14th, the police seize clothes and other belongings from OJ's home. The coroner's office releases its initial report. The crime lab starts performing blood tests. Nicole Brown Simpson's funeral is held on June 16th. OJ attends with his 2 children. By this time, OJ has become the chief suspect in the murders. The police have collected a lot of evidence, but there was no request for a warrant of arrest. On June 17th, 8:30 a.m., the police calls OJ's lawyer, Robert Shapiro, telling him that OJ needs to surrender by 11 a.m. that day. Murder charges have been filed against him. His arraignment is scheduled that afternoon. Shapiro goes to OJ, who is currently residing in an undisclosed home in the San Fernando Valley, and informs him of this at 9:30 a.m. A little over an hour after his scheduled surrender, OJ has yet to appear. The police call Shapiro, stating that they will inform the public that OJ is now a fugitive. Shapiro gives the police directions to the house. When the police arrive at the San Fernando Valley house, they learn that OJ has slipped away with his pro football teammate, Al Cowlings. At 1:50 p.m., LAPD Commander David Gascon announces that OJ is a fugitive. They didn't know where he was, but they promised to catch him. The massive manhunt resulted in a slow-motion car chase that was broadcast live nationwide. It ended hours later, a little before 8 p.m. outside of OJ's Brentwood home. Both he and Cowlings are arrested and transported to Men's Central Jail. OJ was arraigned on July 22nd. He entered a plea of not guilty. After a highly publicized trial, OJ is acquitted by the jury on October 2nd, 1995. OJ vowed that he will find the real killers, but he has yet to show any results. Instead, he was found responsible for the wrongful deaths of Brown and Goldman in a civil trial in February 1997. The court ordered him to pay $33.5 million, though he has yet to pay that amount in full. Did OJ get away with murder, or did someone else commit the crime? Plenty of theories have been shared online. One theory pointed the finger at serial killer Glenn Rogers. In the investigation Discovery documentary, My Brother the Serial Killer, Glenn Rogers' brother claims that Glenn told him about meeting Nicole just weeks before she was killed. He worked as a house painter in the area, noted that Nicole was wealthy, and stated that he planned to take her down. OJ's lawyer, Johnny Cochran, on the other hand, believed that the murders were the result of a drug deal gone bad. Both theories don't have any evidence to support them, but there is one that seems plausible. Jason Simpson. According to former cop-turned-private investigator Bill Deere, Jason is the most likely suspect. He has a history of violence. In fact, in a fit of rage, he almost killed his former girlfriend, Jennifer Green, with a knife. Diaries obtained by Deere show Jason writing about killing the people who hurt his loved ones. He even mentioned cutting away his problems with a knife. He visited the ER in January of that year, just 6 months prior to the murders, because he was hearing voices and felt that he was going to rage because he ran out of Depakote. 2 months prior to the killings, Jason had stopped taking his medication. One of the biggest stumbling blocks to this alternative theory is Jason's alibi during the night of the murders. He was at work in Jackson's restaurant with a time card to prove it. However, his time card's entry that night was handwritten, even though the electronic time clock used by employees was working perfectly fine. Moreover, Jason was under probation for assaulting his boss with a kitchen knife at the time. That's not all. The black knit cap that was found in the crime scene with animal and hair fibers could not be connected to OJ. But there are photos of Jason wearing this type of cap often, and he has a dog. There's even a photo that looks identical to the one found at the crime scene. In addition, just a day after the murders, OJ hired a top criminal attorney named Carl Jones to represent Jason. Also, Jason went through field knife training when he attended the Army and Navy Academy. Probably the most incriminating point out of all the circumstantial evidence collected by Deere is the fact that Jason wasn't seen by anyone after 9:50 p.m. that night. He was by himself within the window of time that the murders occurred. With his rage issues and overprotectiveness, it's not that far-fetched for Jason to get angry at Nicole. It is believed that Nicole and her party were supposed to dine at the restaurant that Jason was working at, but she changed the location without informing him. This could have triggered his anger. The fact that his father was not invited to the dinner could also have been a trigger. According to witnesses, Jason had a love-hate relationship with Nicole. However, all of these are just circumstantial evidence. There's no physical evidence that ties Jason to the crime scene. The footprints leading away from the bodies left behind by the 12 Bruno Marley shoes were not made by Jason. More importantly, it was OJ's blood that was at the scene of the crime, as well as his house and vehicle, not Jason's. No matter how plausible the theory is, the physical evidence never pointed to Jason. It all pointed to OJ Simpson. The evidence collected by the police was damning. There was blood, hair, and fiber from Nicole and Goldman inside the Bronco. One of his gloves was at the crime scene, while the other was at his house. Both gloves contained blood that had OJ's genetic markers, as well as Nicole's and Goldman's. The police also found a pair of bloody socks in his bedroom with a DNA profile that was consistent with Nicole's and OJ's. There were bloody shoe prints that matched a pair of shoes that he owned, with photo evidence to prove it. Blood drops containing OJ's genetic markers were also found at the murder scene, and he had cuts on his hand that he couldn't account for. At the very least, these pieces of evidence could prove his presence at the scene of the murder that night. His attempted escape prior to his arrest made him look even more guilty. He even had his passport with him, along with a disguise and $8,750 in cash. Experts have noted that the amount of evidence against OJ was overwhelming, enough to convict a person if it had been an average homicide case. But the defense was able to create doubt among the jury. Instead of disproving the DNA evidence, OJ's dream team revealed that some of the evidence was tampered with, some went missing. Expert witnesses, including the criminologist present at the crime scene, testified that some of the evidence wasn't collected properly or mishandled. There were even photos of items that were not labeled or logged, making it difficult to determine which area of the crime scene they were found. One of the detectives, Mark Furman, was even accused of being racist and planting evidence. The leather gloves that were believed to have been worn by Nicole's killer didn't fit OJ's hands. This prompted OJ's lawyer, Johnny Cochran, to quote his famous phrase to the jury, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." However, it was possible that the gloves had shrunk due to the testing that they had gone through, making it difficult for OJ to wear them. Unfortunately, this realization only came later for the prosecution team. By the end of the trial, OJ's likability and star power, coupled with sloppy police work and racial bias, prevented the jury from convicting him. On October 2nd, 1995, OJ was found not guilty. Did OJ Simpson get away with murder? Most likely. There were numerous signs that pointed to his guilt. He had the motive and a history of violence directed at Nicole. There was a lot of physical evidence to tie him to the scene. Moreover, some of the jurors have since admitted that their verdict was retribution for the acquittal of the white police officers who beat up Rodney King in 1992. In addition, a book called If I Did It was published, ghostwritten with Simpson's approval, which detailed how the murders occurred if he had committed the crime. The book was incredibly detailed, describing all the events that led up to the moment that the murders occurred. It's been more than 2 decades since the murders of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman. But the facts remain the same. There's no other person who could have committed the crime but OJ himself.
Welcome to Bad Things. In this video, we will give you evidence and little-known facts that nearly 30 years after the trial would have put Simpson behind bars for life. Reason number 1. 62 cases of domestic violence. Simpson married Nicole Brown on February 2nd, 1985. Brown was forced to sign a prenuptial agreement by Simpson and was prohibited from working while married. In her journals, she said that being financially dependent on Simpson made her hesitant to report the extraordinary amount of domestic abuse she was a victim of. These cases while married were meticulously recorded by Brown. The staggering number of cases numbered 62 incidents, with only 8 being reported. Not all these cases were behind closed doors, and many of them were in front of family and friends, and as brazen as in the full view of the public. This evidence shows that Simpson was not averse to violence against his wife. Case number 63 would be the last. Reason number 2. Straight from the horse's mouth. During an episode of rage, people may say things they don't mean. In Simpson's case, saying things that would implicate him before, during, and after the trial became run-of-the-mill and at times very insensitive. Although hearing some of these threats are from third parties, we cannot discredit them outright, as what was said came to life. Brown had told one of her friends that during an incident, Simpson had said, "I'll kill you and get away with it because I'm OJ Simpson." This is not the first time he threatened to kill her. Most of her journal entries contain those exact words. "If the knife is rusted, I can't be busted." This was Simpson's reaction after being told a knife was found at his old residence by construction workers in 1998 and was being tested by authorities for DNA. Although this evidence is from third parties, Simpson takes the cake by actively collaborating and accepting money for the ghost-written "If I Did It," in which Simpson puts forth a description of how he hypothetically would have committed the murders. Simpson at no time or action showed any real remorse for what had happened to the 2 victims. Reason number 3. We have a runner. Being accused of murder must take a huge toll on your psychological mindset. Running from the authorities screams of guilt. On June 17, 1994, detectives recommended that Simpson be charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Simpson was to hand himself over at Robert Kardashian's, a family friend and one of Simpson's lawyers, home. When arriving at Kardashian's home, the police found that Simpson and their former teammate had fled and were on the run. The ensuing low-speed chase of the white Bronco they fled in would attract a live TV audience of 95 million people and throw the OJ Simpson case into the world spotlight. After eventually surrendering $8,000 in cash, a change of clothing, a loaded .357 Magnum, a United States passport, family pictures, and a disguise kit with a fake goatee and mustache were found in the Bronco. Simpson knew that there were vast amounts of evidence and historical violence towards one of the victims to implicate him in the murders and tried to evade arrest. Reason number 4. DNA doesn't lie. One of the most contentious issues in the Simpson trial was the DNA evidence given by the prosecution. DNA evidence was in its infancy in 1994. The first case to use DNA as evidence was 7 years earlier and wasn't fully understood by the public, Simpson's defense team, and most importantly, the 12 jurors responsible for a verdict. The DNA evidence was complicated and became tedious to the jurors as over 100 exhibits were being presented. Jurors had to try to process technical DNA terminology for 8 hours a day over 9 weeks. It was so complicated that Simpson's defense team barely recognized its implications and argued with a blanket response that the DNA was either contaminated or planted by the police because of the racial tendencies of the LAPD at the time. DNA evidence against Simpson is damning and includes 1. The killer dropped blood near shoe prints at the scene of the crime. This blood drop was one of the same type as Simpson's, a 1 in 9 billion chance. Blood drops matching Simpson were also found at 8 different locations at the crime scene. 2. 4 drops of blood found in Simpson's home matched Simpson's type. Blood on socks found in Simpson's home matched Nicole's. The black glove found on Simpson's property had no less than 10 DNA markers of Simpson, Brown, and Goldman. 3. The infamous Bronco had 12 markers of DNA consisting of Simpson's and Brown's. The most damning of these was a bloody impression of a size 12 Bruno Magli shoe. When Simpson was asked if he owned any pairs of this brand, his reply was, "I would have never worn those ugly-ass shoes." He was immediately caught in his lie as pictures surfaced of him wearing the shoes to an event. Simpson's blood drops at the various locations are attributed to a cut on his hands that he'd failed to explain. 4. Hairs consistent with that of Simpson were found on a cap at Brown's residence, and hairs consistent with that of Simpson were found on Ron Goldman's shirt. If this case were to be heard in 2022, Simpson would have, solely on the forensic evidence, been convicted and served life for the two senseless and brutal murders that were committed that night. Reason number 5. If the glove fits. The most shocking moment of the trial was when defense lawyer Johnny Cochran put the gloves worn by the killer on Simpson and they did not fit. 2 theories have been put forward for this. And although we might never learn the truth, there still is the question of Simpson's blood being on them. One of the former prosecutors has said that Cochran had torn the lining of the gloves so that Simpson could dramatically punch out his fingers, making the gloves look as if they didn't fit on his hands. I think Johnny tore the lining so that OJ's fingers couldn't go all the way up into the glove, he said. This and the fact that he was wearing latex gloves would make the gloves too small for Simpson's hands. Simpson had been taking arthritis medicine for years to combat the condition he acquired from decades of playing football. Simpson had stopped taking his medication 2 weeks before the case. Stopping medication of this sort would have caused his hands to swell and not fit the gloves. Nicole Brown bought pairs of Aries Light XL gloves in 1990 at Bloomingdale's, and Simpson wore Aries Light gloves from 1990 to June 1994. The evidence we have put forward here is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to OJ Simpson's guilt. His brazen statements and erratic behavior displayed before and after the trial showed the world that he thought he was indestructible. On October 3, 2008, exactly 13 years after he was acquitted of the murders of his ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, Simpson was found guilty on 12 charges related to armed robbery and was sentenced to 33 years in jail, for which he served 9. Thank you for watching Bad Things. Hit the subscribe button, like button, and notification bell, and share our channel for our up-and-coming true crime videos. OJ Simpson, nicknamed Juice for his on-field speed, was the prime suspect in the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson, his ex-wife, and Ronald Goldman, Nicole's friend, on June 12, 1994. This case is still so captivating that people often overlook OJ's other crimes. We are going to have a look at what he had done before and continued to do after the trial of the century. Petty crimes. Orenthal James Simpson was born in Potrero Hill, San Francisco, on July 9, 1947. In the early 1960s, OJ began associating with the members of a street gang called Persian Warriors. In 1962, the 15-year-old OJ was incarcerated at the local juvenile detention center after fighting incidents. Some gang members later confessed that OJ was caught while trying to steal beer. In OJ, the education of a rich rookie, an incident from his early childhood, is mentioned. The story narrates that OJ bluffed by telling cops that his name was Burt Lancaster. The trick worked since he was a kid without any identification documents. Details of his early petty crimes are not documented. However, OJ is said to have been arrested thrice before Willie Mays. The baseball star not only inspired but also reformed his life. Spousal battery. On January 1, 1989, the Los Angeles Times reported the arrest of OJ Simpson for the spousal battery of his second wife, Nicole Brown. The action was taken after OJ's wife, Nicole Brown, called 911. It is vital to note that it was the 9th time she called 911 from her Brentwood home. Officers reported Nicole famously pleading, "He's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. You never do anything about him. You talk to him and then leave." Officers also quoted OJ as asking them, "The police have been out here 8 times before, and now you're going to arrest me for this?" However, he didn't plead a contest. According to LAPD reports, Nicole suffered from scratching and bruising to the extent that she needed hospital treatment. Even though Robert Pingle, deputy city attorney, requested that OJ spend a month in jail and undergo a 1-year program for men charged with spousal battery, the request wasn't entertained, and OJ opted for counseling with a private psychiatrist. In May 1989, 4 months after the incident, he was sentenced to 2-year probation and 120 hours of community service. Stalking and harassment. OJ and Nicole had parted ways, but on October 25, 1993, 911 again responded to the familiar caller. Nicole called 911 from her Brentwood rental home. She reportedly said, "He's OJ Simpson. I think you know his record. Just send somebody over. He always comes back." She was scared to death as she screamed and sobbed during this 15-minute long call. Officers arrived and found OJ, who confessed to breaking the door and took full responsibility for its replacement. Later, during the infamous trial of the 20th century, the point was raised in the courtroom that Simpson was so possessive that he wasn't ready to let go of his ex-wife Nicole, and that he could never see her with someone else, and hence decided to murder her. Anyways, we are not going to go into details of the murder trial, so let's move to OJ's other crimes. Alleged intrusion/trespassing. In September 2004, OJ's girlfriend Christy Prody called the police for the 4th time, accusing OJ of breaking into her home. However, the police didn't find enough evidence to file any charges. Let's not forget that Christy herself led a suspicious life and was arrested in November 2012 for an attempt to steal somebody's purse outside of a mall. Later, on March 5, 2013, she was sentenced to 2 years supervised probation and a 4-year suspended prison term. Alleged road rage. On December 5, 2000, the New York Times reported OJ Simpson's arrest. He was accused by Jeffrey Pattinson of having torn his glasses off after reaching into his car amidst an argument. However, the charge against OJ were dismissed by the jury on October 24, 2001. Satellite broadcast piracy. On December 4, 2001, the DEA and FBI, in collaboration with local law enforcement authorities, searched OJ's house. They had clues about OJ's possible involvement with some money laundering and ecstasy smuggling ring. They also had rumors claiming OJ's attempt to pirate satellite TV signals. Nothing was found to confirm the involvement with a smuggling or money laundering ring. However, the authorities confiscated OJ's satellite equipment for further investigation. Several months later, the FBI's investigation of a lengthy wiretap established OJ's links to prominent drug dealers and smugglers. He wasn't arrested due to the lack of concrete evidence. However, later in July 2005, OJ lost a civil trial against DirecTV over signal piracy. He was held liable to pay the company $25,000 in addition to $33,678 in attorney's fees and costs. Overspeeding. This time, on July 4, 2002, OJ was accused of powerboat overspeeding. The court summoned him, but he missed the hearing. The court later issued the arrest warrant and OJ paid a $130 fine to settle the issue. Robbery and kidnapping. On September 13, 2007, OJ was arrested for serious criminal offenses including burglary, armed robbery, kidnapping, and conspiring a crime. The investigation recovered stolen sports memorabilia. OJ claimed that 2 of those memorabilia belonged to him, and they were earlier stolen from him and he just took them back. The dealer, on the other hand, claimed that OJ, with 5 other armed men, charged into his hotel room and stole those items. On October 3, 2008, OJ was finally declared guilty of several robbery, kidnapping, and weapons charges. On December 5, 2008, the court sentenced OJ to 33 years in prison. "I didn't want to steal anything from anyone," was OJ's last remark to the judge. On May 26, 2009, OJ's attorneys filed an appeal with the Nevada Supreme Court, claiming that OJ didn't know if any of his fellows were armed during the Las Vegas incident. The court was not convinced and maintained the convictions. Another effort bore fruit on October 19, 2012, when a Nevada District Court judge agreed to consider initiating a new trial. It was maintained that the attorney, Yale Galanter, misrepresented OJ during the 2008 trial. Galanter was accused of being motivated by his personal ambitions, since he limited OJ's legal representation by never telling him about the possibility of a plea deal. On July 31, 2013, parole for good behavior was granted to OJ on 5 of the 12 convictions. But on November 26, 2013, the judge dismissed the appeal for a new trial. He maintained that all grounds in the petition lacked merit. Finally, on December 14, 2021, After a series of considerations, OJ was released from parole thanks to his good behavior. Previous parole conditions were also released, hence awarding him a completely free life.